When Philip Seymour Hoffman moved into his own apartment, the rumors started almost immediately, whispers that he was cheating on his partner. But Mimi O'Donnell stayed silent. Not because she had nothing to say, but because the truth was far darker than the gossip. Philip Seymour Hoffman lived a life that, while short, burned with astonishing brilliance. He was an actor of rare talent, not just a master of his craft, but deeply and achingly human. His performances didn't just depict characters, they embodied people, with all their cracks, their flaws, their pain, and their fragile dreams. But as is often the case with those who feel everything so deeply, Hoffman's own life was full of quiet battles. And not all of them were victories. He was born on July 23, 1967, in the quiet town of Fairport, New York. His mother, Marilyn O'Connor, raised 4 children on her own after divorcing Hoffman's father when Philip was just 9 years old. She managed to earn her degree and become a family court judge, a feat that demanded relentless strength. She was strict but devoted, and it was likely from her that Philip inherited the fierce sense of discipline and purpose that would one day carry him to the heights of Hollywood. As a teenager, Hoffman didn't dream of the stage. He was obsessed with sports, especially wrestling and baseball. Had life not thrown a brutal twist his way, he might have gone in a very different direction. At the age of 14, a serious neck injury ended his athletic ambitions. Suddenly, he found himself at a crossroads, and it was then that he first stepped into a high school drama class. By that time, he had already seen plays that stirred something in him beyond mere interest. Arthur Miller's All My Sons, a performance starring a young Robert Downey Jr. These were stories that reached into his soul. His mother encouraged this new passion, never guessing it would become the defining force of his life. He enrolled in New York University's Tisch School of the Arts and graduated in 1989. But the path forward wasn't smooth. It was filled with odd jobs, rejections, long dry spells, and a creeping darkness. Somewhere between auditions and waiting tables, Hoffman began to spiral. New York in those days pulsed with temptation, and he didn't resist. Alcohol, drugs, anything to dull the anxiety clawing at him from the inside. By the time he was 22, he was scared enough to walk himself into rehab, a decision that would save his life for nearly 2 decades. Then came his first television role on Law and Order, followed soon by his big screen debut. He added Seymour to his name to avoid confusion with another actor. And then came a career-changing role in The Devil's Advocate, opposite Al Pacino. 5 auditions, 1 chance. The film earned over $134 million, and everything changed. He quit his job at the deli and committed himself fully to acting. He started working with Paul Thomas Anderson and the Coen brothers. His reputation grew, but his roles stayed unpredictable: loners, misfits, broken, and sometimes terrifying people. In Flawless, he played a drag queen; in others, villains or deeply insecure men. Always vulnerable, always real. He wasn't acting, he was being. Meryl Streep once said of him, "This actor is fearless." He gave a wretched character the dignity no one else would, and in doing so, made him real. By the early 2000s, Hoffman's career was thriving. Around that time, he met Mimi O'Donnell. She had joined a project as a costume designer, but she stayed for something much deeper. Their connection was slow and steady. They were both involved with other people when they first met, and their relationship grew out of artistic respect and a quiet, honest magnetism. Even at the peak of his success, though, the darkness never entirely let go. His addiction didn't vanish, it simply retreated underground. He stayed sober for nearly 20 years. He became one of the most respected actors of his generation. He won an Oscar for portraying Truman Capote, not just an award, but a personal triumph. Or so it seemed. But the hardest battles are often invisible. And one day he lost his footing. Philip Seymour Hoffman died on February 2, 2014. He was only 46. Heroin was found in his apartment. The relapse had been swift and quiet, like the way light disappears when clouds cover the sky. He left behind more than just movies and awards. He left behind the memory of a man who saw the world with a kind of sorrowful clarity. A man who understood that weakness wasn't shameful, it was human. He performed as though he were carrying the emotional weight of others, and maybe that was his greatest tragedy. He felt everything too deeply. He left too soon. But he never really left. Before anything meaningful could blossom between them, Philip Seymour Hoffman had to come clean. Not just to her, but to life itself. He had a past. And it wasn't just complicated, it was dark, deep, and nearly bottomless. By the time he met Mimi O'Donnell, he had been sober for nearly 10 years, fighting his way back, inch by inch, from the grip of addiction. But this time, something felt different. Their connection wasn't fleeting. He knew it, he had to be honest. So one day, without performance or pretense, he told her the truth. Mimi would later recall how he spoke with clarity and dignity, never trying to minimize the weight of his experience. His confession didn't drive them apart, it brought them closer. From that moment on, Hoffman tried to carry light, even when storms raged inside him. In 2005, he was offered a role that felt less like a part and more like a calling. He was to play Truman Capote, an odd, eccentric, deeply sensitive writer and the author of the infamous In Cold Blood. For an actor who seemed to have lived 1,000 lives on screen, this was a new kind of plunge. And he dove in, willingly. He didn't act, he became. For more than 4 months, Philip studied Capote's mannerisms, his gestures, his walk, his expressions. He listened intently to every inflection of his voice. He transformed his body, losing weight, raising his pitch, thinning out his vocal tone. It was physically draining and psychologically dangerous. The role required me to be slightly unhinged, and it took a toll on my mental health, he admitted. But quitting wasn't in his nature. Even between takes, he stayed in character. He said slipping out would break the spell, and his body wouldn't be able to keep going. Hoffman approached every role as if he were meeting a real person, someone he had to understand, not portray. About Capote, he said, I had to capture all of his vitality, all the nuance, all the complexity. Audiences felt it. When the film premiered in 2005, it earned him his first Academy Award for Best Actor.